The early 2000s, by the way, had some weird times in wrestling, and nothing proves that more than Vince McMahon as ECW champion. You got to hear some of this.
Well, let's talk about one of our more controversial moments in the history of pay-per-view. It's up next. Eric Bischoff is promising Vince McMahon backstage that Raw would decimate SmackDown. He said he planned to screw John Cena just as McMahon screwed Bret Hart. And, as Bischoff chanted, "You screwed Cena," Cena walked in and he said, "So Eric Bischoff screws guys? Not really my thing." And then McMahon asked Cena, "What's good in the hood?" And then said, "Keep it up, my blank." And then strutted away like George Jefferson. And then we see Booker and Sharmell, and Booker says, "Tell me he didn't just say that." And I can't believe this actually happened. And if I'm honest with you, I kind of forgot that it was even on this show till I started doing my research. But here we are 15 years away from maybe one of the more controversial things that Vince ever did on pay-per-view. But, you know, context is king, I suppose. Chat me up. Just a minute.
I don't think it holds up well.
No shit. Doesn't age well. You know, at the time you're doing different things that we would never do now. Eric Bischoff and I just watched the episode where he was fired, and they showed a clip of Mae Young giving him a stink face. And then they came back to her in the courtroom scene, and she's on the witness stand, and she's got her middle and forefinger spread, and she's flipping her tongue around in between them. And it's like, you could never do that in 2020. Like that would never in a million years happen. But hey, that was pop culture in 05. But my goodness, if you had this one back, you probably wish you had this one to do over, huh?
Probably so.
Obviously this is something that is, a sensitive topic these days. Do you remember this being something that you had to sort of go run past a lot of folks backstage? Would this have been something that you would have gotten the green light for?
Well, I think that there were people whose opinions were asked, and, you know, again, it's just a different time and a different place where you did different things that were not, you know, not things that hold up. When I go back and I'm into the Alfred Hitchcock hour now, taping it every single night, you know, you sit there and you watch some of the things of, on television of men just basically, slapping the shit out of women, back and forth as if it was just another day at the office. And it's just, time has a way of making things cringeworthy.
Do you remember, Booker or Sharmell having a reaction to this, or they understand, hey, it's entertainment. We're trying something, might work, might not.
You know, again, it's just different time, different place, different mentality.
I know this sounds silly, but Vince is somebody we've always believed to be disconnected from pop culture. You know, this is someone who you've sort of joked before in the past would say, what about Steinfeld instead of Seinfeld? Because he was just, you know, that's not in his wheelhouse. And there's even been jokes about him listening to certain types of music on the show and things like that. I'm saying all that to ask, does someone have to coach him up on the proper way to say the word? I know that sounds silly, but in hip hop, they use an A. In not so pleasant ways, people use the hard R, and it's almost become a big joke. I'm sure someone comes to Vince and has the idea, hey, wouldn't it be hilarious if he did this or he said that? And then they have to make sure he understands that there are intricacies in how the context of
he's not a child. He's a grown ass man. And you know, it's again, dude, it's different time, different place.
No arguing that. This is just, if you watch this without the context of who John Cena is and how silly WWE is, as you said, doesn't age well. Do you remember there ever being a different circumstance where he was trying to talk cool, like try to be hip, and just like a lot of our dads do, it just falls a little flat? Like, for instance, let me give you an example. I'm sure you've heard of, WAP this year. It was like the late summer anthem. I can't believe that was a hit song, but you're familiar with WAP, correct?
Yes.
So as crazy as it is that that's a song, my dad has no idea what that is or that it exists. Well, very recently we were watching football together, and an old friend of ours who we hadn't heard from in a long time texted my dad. And as he's telling me, he's like, man, I hadn't heard from this guy in like 8 years. Can you believe it? This is so cool, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you know, he's got like a catering business now. He said, what? I said, well, it's like a food truck deal. He's like, really? What's he sell? And I said, wings and pizza. And he said, really? I said, yeah. I said, you should tell him, you know, put him over, make him feel good. Say, hey man, I can't wait to get some of your WAP, wings and pizza. That's his food truck. So my dad, not knowing any better, sent this guy, I can't wait to get some of your WAP. And our mutual friend texted it back and said, was this supposed to go to Miss Deborah? Because dad had no idea. And he's like, and he responded, and he's like, don't be a stupid bitch. No, my wife doesn't make wings or pizza. Where would that even come from? And that's when my friend realized
probably his, and he said, my son.
Wings and pizza. So have you ever seen Vince, you know, try to, hey, I'm cool, I'm hip, I know the things.
As much as me or you or anybody else. I mean,
I'm just hoping you can give me a lighthearted story so we can move off of him dropping the N-bomb and just have a good show.
I ain't got no lighthearted story.
Okay, cool. But the other subplot or storyline going on here is Styles and Taz. Of course, in this era, we've just fired Jim Ross. Joey Styles is his replacement. He's the voice of Raw. Taz is one of the voices on SmackDown with Michael Cole. And they're doing commentary here together. And Taz says something like, I'd be happy not to have to work with you again. And Styles said, once every 10 years is fine. And Taz said he hasn't missed him. And Styles said, I'm done with him. Obviously we've had a lot of fun talking about our pal Taz over the years. Did he have real life issues with Joey Styles, or is this all just part of a storyline building towards, you know, some crescendo with Raw versus SmackDown?
Yeah, it was the brand rivalry there. I don't know if there was ever any heat there one way or another. I'm sure Taz has had a lot of heat with a lot of people throughout the years. That, you know, Taz is one of those guys, very quiet, likes to keep to himself, and has been misunderstood.
Yes,
quite a bit throughout his career.
I would agree.
So, yeah, no, this was, to my knowledge, I think that Joey and Taz are friendly.
But for more great stuff today we're doing something that I enjoy. It's the anniversary shows. And yesterday was the 15-year anniversary of No Way Out 2005. It went down on February 20th from the Mellon Arena in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It drew 9,500 fans, did about 240,000 buys on pay-per-view, which ended up being the second lowest in 2005 behind No Mercy in October. This is in fact the 7th No Way Out pay-per-view. It is a SmackDown branded event. There's two main events on this show, one of which is very interesting. It's a barbed wire cage match for the WWE title. It's JBL defending against Big Show there. And then we also get the hometown boy, Kurt Angle, against John Cena. We're coming off the Royal Rumble where we saw Batista win it. Of course, Vince would tear both quads on his incident getting into the ring. Of course, the finish didn't go exactly as planned. Briefly tell everybody about the chairman and his quad injury.
Oh God. Yeah, it was supposed to be a John Cena elimination with Batista winning the Rumble. And when they went for the spot, whatever happened, Dave lost his balance and both Cena and Batista came out at the same time. No, it wasn't supposed to happen, folks. And that wasn't the planned finish. And it was a bit of a screw up there, but thank God, at least it was close. You know what I mean? It looked like they both hit at the same time. And as we're all going, fuck, we're talking about what we're going to do before you know it, Vince is out the curtain and Vince is storming down to the ring. And when Vince went to slide into the ring, he tore his quad and he went to get up and he couldn't get up because his quad wasn't there. I mean, he was screwed. And Vince restarted the match. Batista got rid of Cena and what have you, and they helped Vince to the back, but he was very adamant about not being helped too much. And at that time, as he wasn't being helped too much, he tore his other quad. And very interesting night, to say the least.
Yeah, it sounds like a horrific night. We've covered that one a few different times. Let's talk a little bit about Vince. This has got to be, you're talking about how you're burnt out. This has got to be one of the worst times of his life, because of this torn quad injury, a couple things have to change. He can't be around these wrestling events that are the centerpiece of his life and business, personally, professionally, etc. And B, he can't work out. And what we've heard about Vince is that he is just a freak when it comes to that, to the point where sometimes when you guys land in the middle of the morning or middle of the night, he still wants to go straight to the gym to train before he does anything else. How off his rocker was Vince in this era where he can't go to shows and he can't go work out? He had to just be going crazy in his house, right?
Yes and no. I mean, when you say can't work out, Vince was probably working out his upper body harder than he ever had in his life during this time. However, his favorite body part is his legs. He loves to work legs. Didn't get the memo from Hawk and Randy Savage. It's an upper body business. So he was working out harder, and contrary to what people thought, he was involved and he was out there and recovered, did everything that I would advise against doing, but probably recovered 4 months ahead of projections.
Wow.
Just by, again, he did a different type of rehab, and he religiously did it, and he got in there and he did everything that he had to do so that he would get back. And I don't think that it wasn't even a month before he was back on the road.
Was there a concern of his, just because he's always been jacked and he's always presented himself a certain way? Was it a concern of his to, because we've heard never sell it, that type of thing, very machismo. Was there a part of him that's sort of old school and I don't want anybody to see me in a wheelchair, I don't want anybody to see me with a walker, that type of thing?
No, I think it's just more of I think that's the persona. I think that that's what a lot of people think and want to believe. Vince is just one of those guys that is going to do whatever he can to get beyond that. And he did do that in this situation where it was like, holy fuck, you're back. So in that regard, yeah, he's crazy and has a work ethic that is unmatched in that regard, so that his rehab matched the work ethic of everything else that he did, where he was religious and doing everything that he could. If it meant doing one thing extra, he would do two things extra, just to get back to where he wanted to be. And that was, out amongst everybody. So
no surprise with that. Let's talk about Vince. We briefly touched on him jumping into the ring at WrestleMania, or Royal Rumble rather, and tearing both quads. Well, as you can imagine, he has to have surgery to repair those. And Wade Keller would write, answering the question of whether Vince McMahon would let people see him in a wheelchair, he showed up last Friday at MSG, his favorite arena, for a Raw house show. He was in a wheelchair backstage with his legs both wrapped and elevated. Stephanie Shane and Linda McMahon were also backstage. He was greeted by a number of wrestlers. He did not show himself publicly in front of the crowd. But the show does well. It's up from prior MSG house shows. And the report would also continue. Office staffers have been affected by Vince's absence from the office on a regular basis, as some have had to make trips between the office or production studio and his home to let him see tapes of pre-produced videos for his approval or critiquing. The estimates for the time it will take him to get back on his feet and traveling to all events is about 6 months due to the serious nature of the double quad tears. Now, we know Vince McMahon ain't going to sit like this for 6 months, but still, Vince McMahon in a wheelchair, not a sight a lot of people ever thought they would see. And maybe perhaps causing some inconveniences running back and forth. What do you remember about Vince's time post-surgery?
Well, he worked his ass off to get to the point of being able to.
WrestleMania is 3 days, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, shit. Okay, I'll tell you what. See, that was just a quick text. That one I can answer. Boom, right there, and we're good to go. Vince is. I think that a good way to describe it would be, if you have one thing that you really love to do, the one thing that no matter what happens, you're going to do, whether it's your favorite meal, it's your favorite thing to do, just whatever it is, you got to go play Madden on Tuesday. Vince McMahon's favorite thing to do was work out.
Right.
And his favorite workout is legs. So looking at that was his goal. He wanted to get back to be where he could work out all the time. And he was working out like a madman. But he couldn't do legs the way that he loved to do legs. So he was constantly just rehabilitating, doing everything that he could to be back on his feet and get rolling. So that was a priority for him, and it was a little inconvenient for some folks, but for others that are used to, you're working around the chairman's schedule and what he needs, and that's what you do. So you get there and go for it.
Was he even more cantankerous when he's wheelchair bound than normal?
Not really. Frustrated with himself, yes, but not really. Cantankerous.
That's a Southern word.
It's a hell of a wine, by the way.
Yeah, it is. Well, he does one for Raw as well. Keller would say the two messages were, number one, slow it down in the ring and cut back on needless high spots and tell a story instead. And number two, reestablish a set of rules so that breaking rules mean something. And Keller would say the speech, a rare all wrestlers, all staffers meeting, lasted about 40 minutes and included an open forum Q&A session afterwards. Overall, his speech to the Raw crew was met with more praise and enthusiasm than his more threatening, condescending speech the week before to the SmackDown crew was. While his SmackDown speech was laced with threats of layoffs, the Raw speech was all positive. Part of the contrast in the speeches is that McMahon sees the Raw crew as the more experienced group on the more established show, and they need to be talked to like an NBA coach would talk to someone in their mid-20s and mid-30 something pro athletes. He sees the SmackDown crew as the less experienced crew without experienced leaders at the level of Triple H or Shawn Michaels, who need to be talked to more like a college coach would talk to 18 to 22-year-old amateur basketball players. What do you think about the way he describes the way you have to handle the different groups? Or is it more of a story of Vince realizing, shit, that didn't go the way I planned for SmackDown, and maybe changing the approach a little bit for Raw?
It's basically the same speech, basically the same exact speech, different audience and different people getting back to whoever the hell they were getting back to with a different perception of it. The speeches were the same message, same everything. And two different groups took it two different ways.
Let me ask you this. When he talks about without experienced leaders, he references wrestlers. If there was a difference in the speeches, how much of it is based on talking to a crew that's led by Paul Heyman and Vince just having a certain opinion about him one way or another?
Well, I don't know that the crew was led by Paul Heyman. On the SmackDown side, you had Undertaker and good God.
I didn't mean in ring. I just mean, if this is their supposed creative influencer behind the scenes, because you told us before that he was the head writer for SmackDown and Brian was more for Raw. But if Brian was perceived as more of a McMahon disciple, whereas Heyman was more contrarian, would that affect the way the speeches were handled or no?
It may have affected the way the speeches were interpreted.
Okay.
But again, the speeches were the same. That's what I'm trying to explain. The speech, there weren't two different speeches. He gave the exact same message to the Raw crew. It was the Raw crew interpreted it, and they perceived it differently than the SmackDown crew did.
Let me ask you about the open Q&A, because I feel like this would be something where Vince would probably sincerely say, if anyone has any questions, by all means ask. But I feel like a lot of people are probably looking around like nobody better raise their fucking hand. And then if someone does ask a question, maybe some of the more senior folks are like, look at this fucking asshole asking questions of Vince. Does that dynamic exist?
Yes, definitely. And here's why. A lot of times I think that people, when they get to the point of anybody have any questions, guys are like, let's just get the fuck out of here.
Absolutely.
Please.
Yeah.
God damn it. We get it. Okay. We're going to slow down. We're going to be better. Rah, rah, hip, hip, hooray. God, don't ask any questions. And then somebody asks a question, and that opens up another fucking can of worms. And then somebody else will make another comment. It's just like, shut up and let's go. Right or wrong. That's the sentiment.
Who are some folks who would raise their hand and ask questions?
Usually the younger talent. I don't know anybody specifically by name, but it was usually some of the younger talent that just, I got a question, sir. When are we going to get our pay for, I worked in, Nova Scotia and I got paid for that. And questions like that.
That Vince doesn't have the answer to off the top of his head anyway.
Exactly. Or just some off the wall, nitpicky shit that may only pertain to that one person. So it was always funny to see who would ask the questions and what questions we would get, because most of the time the sentiment was, let's go, let's get out of here. Next.
You're going to love this. When, we're talking about slow down, tell a story, don't take all these crazy risks. Wade Keller wrote, some wrestlers though see this philosophy as nothing more than an attempt by Triple H to slow everybody down to the level he is physically capable of. Due to injuries, he can't keep up with a faster pace, more athletic style. Hunter is as influential as anyone in WWE other than McMahon, and the last thing he wants to be is seen as obsolete in comparison to his colleagues pushing to get the top spot he now occupies. There was also frustration with wrestlers who agree with the work rate style McMahon endorsed, but see it as unrealistic since most TV matches last under 5 minutes. Asking wrestlers to work a 5-minute match in the same style as a 30-minute Hunter-Shawn match is seen as career killing. Your thoughts?
Well, it's silly to even put Triple H in that context there, especially at that time. But no, that is something that Vince has always preached as far as slowing down and telling stories. And that comes from Pat Patterson, and it comes from the agents that come from another time. However, it's a double-edged sword. When you talk about having, as you just said, having a 5-minute match on television, when you haven't even you want to tell me a story, you want to slow down, I haven't even set the heat at 5 minutes. So you have to condense a 30-minute match into a 5-minute match because that's the only window allocation you have on television. And it's tough to do. And it just left people more confused than anything. And what he was saying is just a lot of the craziness, limit it. Let's try and tell a story here. Don't go out 900 miles an hour and just King Cancun and move on to the next thing and not sell anything. If you're going to do something big and a crazy, crazy spot that looks like it should kill both guys, sell it. Take your time. Make it mean something versus do this crazy spot and then get right up 10 seconds later and like nothing ever happened and move on to the next spot. That's what he's trying to say. But it's contradictory no matter how you look at it, because you're telling guys slow down. Oh, hey, how long do I have for my match tonight? You got 4 minutes. Okay. It's tough to do.
Another wrestler would say, the meetings are good. They make us feel like we're more part of a team. It makes you realize what's right and what's wrong, or at least management is looking for you to be doing. In the past, we didn't really know what Vince was thinking. Now at least we do. And when he tells us the meetings are equal, by that, I mean, it's not a beatdown session. It's 50% good and 50% bad. Hey, rip us apart. Let us know how to get better. We're all getting more thick skinned. When he says this is your chance to ante up, there are these spots that if you want them and will work for them, I thought it was a nice message. Everyone else seems to think so too. And another wrestler told Wade it was a good speech. What he said made sense. So by and large, it's received pretty well. You were there. Did you think there was any sort of negativity in these, or was it just typical Vince?
I thought it was typical Vince, and it was Vince opening up. What I think always helps is when Vince would address the troops, because now you're hearing it directly from him. You're not hearing it from me. You're not hearing it from Johnny. You're not hearing it from JR. You're not hearing it from Paul or Michael or anybody else. You're hearing it directly from Vince, with Vince's passion and Vince's vision. So when you do that, the boys feel better. It's like, hey, he took time to tell me. So that did make him feel better. And to me, it was just Vince. And if he had time to do that more often, I think it would be healthier.
One of the things that was written that I found interesting is one of the wrestlers who didn't enjoy the meetings told Wade he's not performing on TV anymore and he wants an audience. So therefore the wrestlers are his audience now. I think that's way out of place. Does that sound like sour grapes to you?
Yes, that's silly.
So the show doesn't happen without some fireworks. Wade Keller would write that when a pregnant Dawn Marie arrived, she's welcoming everybody and saying hello, and she offers a handshake to Francine, but Francine ain't having it. They have a bit of a rude conversation with one another. Did you know about, or did you think that there would be any sort of backstage hijinks here? I mean, it's almost become legendary that the ECW locker room at times could be like the goddamn OK Corral. Did you assume that because this was under the WWE banner that everybody would be on their best behavior and none of that shit would exist, because perhaps a lot of these talents saw this as an opportunity to maybe do more with the company?
Well, you would hope that professionals would act professionally.
As a result of this Dawn Marie Francine incident, they do a pre-show meeting with the talent that Vince McMahon and Johnny Ace run late in the afternoon. And Vince specifically says, hey, you got to put any old grudges to the side for the night. And he asks everyone to be professional and settle any disputes they have at another time and another place, which of course is going to be something that becomes relevant later in the show with JBL. We'll talk about that later. It's also something I learned in my research that I didn't know before we started doing these podcasts, that Vince McMahon was working the gorilla position throughout the show, sitting right next to Paul Heyman. And he's also helping produce the announcers. This is, I don't know. We've seen a lot of footage over the years of you sitting next to Vince in gorilla. It's a little hard for me to imagine Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon sitting side by side in gorilla. It feels like that's oil and water as far as their view on wrestling, especially when it comes to ECW. Do I have that wrong?
No, they're two producers that, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe because it's normal. To those that actually exist in that world, there's nothing abnormal about it.
Supposedly the WWE agents are here. Johnny Ace, Gerald Briscoe, Arn Anderson, Tony Gurria, Ricky Steamboat, and Fit Finlay. They're all here to work backstage, but they're not being intrusive. According to one wrestler that talked to Wade Keller, they're letting the guys sort of do what they want to do. And instead of dictating to them, they say, hey, what'd you guys have in mind? We're here if you need anything. So more of a support role. How would you say that's different from, say, a Raw or a SmackDown and what the agents would do these days? For the most part, the producers help the talent lay out their matches and let them know what is in store for them for the evening.
I don't know how this was done since I wasn't there, but I can only imagine that a lot of that was taken care of before the guys ever even got to the arena, so that people knew who they were working with, knew what was expected of them before they stepped foot in the building that day. And the producers were there just make sure that there wasn't anything that was going to be too crazy, or offer their assistance in putting things together and making it flow and work better. Another day at the office.
Stephanie and Triple H did not attend the show. Shane McMahon is spotted at the building early in the day. Let's also talk about Shane McMahon. It's been written over the years that Shane McMahon was a big ECW fan during their original run. Do you remember having conversations with Shane about ECW, or maybe taking his temperature on what he thought of One Night Stand and the idea of doing a reunion show?
Shane was a big fan of ECW, and he enjoyed it, and just liked the presentation of the show, the television show. So that was something that he followed. He watched it, much more so than anyone else. And it, yeah, he liked it. I don't know that there was anything really more to it than that.
On March 5th, 2007, Shane comes back to inform his father, Vince, about the guest referee for the Battle of the Billionaires. He tells him that their opponents on the board of directors had won the vote 5-4, and the McMahons had intended for Shane to be the referee, but instead now it's going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin. As we know, of course, Vince loses, gets his head shaved. Shane had to be loving this.
Vince getting his head shaved?
Yeah.
Not as much as me.
Has to be.
I've been wanting to get that head of hair for a while.
At Backlash, this is a real thing. The ECW championship's on the line. Shane, along with Vince McMahon and Umaga, are going to defeat Lashley for the title. Vince gains the pin. So now Vince McMahon is the ECW world champion. Next time I see you,
finally a champion that those three letters could be proud of.
I'm going to punch you square in the dick next time I see you.
Why?
Just for A, for allowing that to happen, and B, for saying that.
Can you name anyone better? No, you cannot. So, okay, we'll move on.
It seems like once upon a time, Shane would have been in these matches, but instead it's Vince here. What's up with that? Like, you know, there's lots of handicap matches, and even at One Night Stand, Shane and Umaga are going to try to help Vince retain the ECW title against Lashley, but fail. You know, once upon a time, it feels like, well, this is a Shane spot, but now here it's Vince. Did Vince just have a wild hair? Did he really like being do-rag Vince?
Do-rag Vince was cool.
Do-rag Vince is cool.
Do-rag Vince with the ECW World Championship. There you go.
It feels like it's right out of a cartoon. I like it.
That's cash. Actually, it really does.
Yeah.
And you would get the strut with the way they would like draw the little lines on the cartoon too. Yep.
SmackDown on August 4th has JBL and Batista announce their match at SummerSlam. It's going to be a no holds barred match, and Orton and Undertaker confirm their SummerSlam match. This episode also features Eddie serving Ray with custody papers for Dominic. Who do you think drew those up? Would that have been your boy Clarence Mason who drew those up?
Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
Oh, yeah. Who could forget them? During the same week, Bret Hart comes to terms with the WWE and Vince McMahon about working with the company to do a DVD regarding his career. This is a big deal because it's been a no-fly zone for a long time. A lot of hurt feelings after the screw job in 97. Obviously, it goes to another level after Owen's tragic death. So to hear that Bret was going to do something with the company again was really exciting for longtime Bret Hart fans. I was fired up about this. And I think a lot of people were probably shocked that this even has an opportunity to be a thing, but it doesn't feel like anybody can keep grudges with the company forever. Were you surprised when they mended fences here and decided to work on a project together?
Nothing surprises me. And it just was a matter of time before it actually was going to happen. I think everyone knew it was going to happen. So when it did, no, it wasn't a big surprise or shock or anything like that. It was two adults that got over their differences and realized that mistakes were made on both sides and were able to move on. So that's, in a nutshell, what it came down to. I think that sometimes people believe what they see on TV, and yes, there were. Look, no doubt about it, there were hostilities there. But in the end, we're all human. We all make mistakes, and we can all forgive. Don't necessarily have to forget, but you can forgive and move on. And that's what happened here. So once Brett and Vince were able to meet and get over all of that other shit, things were at least moving in the right direction.
Let me ask, I don't know what you know or don't know, and as a rule, we don't talk about current stuff, but I just saw a note the other day that this DVD has been removed from the network. Is this more Brett and Vince, you think, hokey pokey, or is that a network glitch, or?
I have no idea.
It's just real random. Somebody said all of a sudden a lot of the Bret Hart stuff was off the network. And I was like, well, I don't know how that would even be. In his book, he describes finding out that he was going to be Vince McMahon's son as being very surreal. He says, I figured it would just be another day at work, but mid-afternoon at rehearsal, Vince's right-hand man, Bruce Prichard, told me to meet him backstage. And when I got there, the first thing he did was demand my phone. I could tell from his expression he was dead serious, so I handed it over. Then he said the words that changed my life. You're Vince's son. What do you remember about the creative leading up to this reveal and what might have supposed to have happened before you pivoted and went to Hornswoggle as the big reveal?
Well, I don't know that there was ever a firm, this is what's going to happen. I know that at one point, Mr. Kennedy was bantered back and forth about being Vince's son, and that we would do a storyline with Ken Kennedy to be the illegitimate heir to the McMahon throne and family, and throw a whole new dynamic into the family squabbles that the McMahon family would have on air. And then, it went to the absurd. Could it be Boogeyman? Could it be Triple H? Could it be The Undertaker? All these different talent that could be the illegitimate heir to the throne. And at one point, half-assed joking, what if it was Hornswoggle? And it's like, God damn, he's Irish. Of course he could. And then the Irish factor, Vince kept coming back to that because he loves that shit. And you would have to have an Irish son, and you would have to have someone that makes sense. Therefore, of course it makes sense to have an Irish little fellow there that could be Vince's son, and we just had fun with it and ran with the damn thing.
Do you remember who pitched, oh, what if it was Hornswoggle?
I don't. I think all of us may have laughed about it and pitched it at some point. That one actually may have been Brian, but I think it might have been me. I don't know.
Talk to us about the importance of grabbing his phone. I mean, obviously you don't want to leak, and you want this to be a genuine surprise. How do you make the determination from this is a time to ask for a phone versus, nah, it doesn't matter?
Well, it was a big deal. It was the reveal that night of Vince's son. Everybody knew the answer. It's going to be Kennedy. That's where we wanted everybody to go. Then it was between Kennedy and Triple H.
Right.
So we wanted to take it all the way down there and then have that last minute swerve with it's Hornswoggle. And the hell was that?
I think you just loaded Windows 95.
Oh, cool.
Hey,
right.
so let me ask, I'm fascinated by what you just said there, that, hey, everybody knew it was going to be Kennedy. It does feel like sometimes when you're watching wrestling, at times it can become predictable, and you're like, well, obviously this is what they're going to do. And I feel like sometimes, just for the sake of, no, that's not what we're going to do, they pivot and they do something outrageous in another direction that no one can call. And it does get a big reaction that night. But how often do you think, and I'm not saying it was the case in this particular scenario, how often do you think a big pivot like that is done, and then effectively it doesn't work as well long-term as what the original plan would have been, but we felt the pressure, since everyone sort of quote unquote knew what we were going to do, that we shouldn't just stay the course. We needed to get the big pop for the swerve, bro. How often do you think that happens?
It depends. I mean, it really does depend on the story and what that story can bring, and if it makes sense. Does it add an entertaining element to the story? And if it does, then shit, yeah, you're going to look at it and say, why not?
After the Royal Rumble, Mr. McMahon would decide to punish Hornswoggle for his failure by making him join the Kiss My Ass Club, except he bit his ass instead. And I guess this is sort of an old midget wrestling standard staple spot brought to the modern era, if you will. Hornswoggle biting Vince McMahon's ass. How would you put that? I mean, if you were trying to, I don't know, place like a job ad on monster.com or something like that. Need little person to bite billionaire's ass, apply below. What's that like?
Yeah, I don't know that it was put that way. I'm pretty sure it was just need ass biter.
Of course.
No tongue.
This leads to, don't knock it till you try it. That led to Vince making a match between the two of them for Raw the next week. You heard me. Vince McMahon versus Hornswoggle. During the match, Vince tries to spank Hornswoggle to teach him a lesson, which brings Finlay out, who interferes with the shillelagh and helps Dylan do what Stone Cold never could. He pins Vince McMahon. And it's a pretty rare sight to see Vince McMahon get in a ring. What leads him to want to do this? Like, does Vince just enamored with the concept of a leprechaun character? Was he missing some, man, I want to get out there and perform for the crowd. I mean, we've heard old time wrestlers say, man, it's just nothing like it. It's such a high, it's such a rush. Did Vince just want to put himself in this spot, or did he just love the leprechaun storyline?
Well, it was family.
Oh God.
So sometimes you have to teach your family a lesson. And it was a highly entertaining lesson to see Vince in there with the leprechaun. That was just some good, funny shit.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.